Hey everybody, what is up? It's Friday. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Just got home from court. Was up in LA checking a few things out, but you might have seen the news. The appellate court has rejected bail for Tory Lanez pending appeal. This is not surprising at all. Honestly, what was most surprising to me is when I went in and looked at the order, how long the order was. I was surprised that they went into that kind of reasoning, but usually they would just reject it like with a one line saying, failure to show reason for extraordinary relief, motion denied, or something like that. But this is a high profile case, so they did a little bit more of a ruling. Thought it was interesting that I didn't see any initials or names of the judges who would have been on this. So this could have just been a research attorney who put it together. Lakia, hey, how's it going? Thanks for saying hi. Thanks for tuning in. I was kind of wondering what kind of interest I would have in this. It's in Friday evening, who would be joining me. And I know the key is to always, put the live out on social media. But I also kind of learned going into YouTube from Ben and the Midas Touch guys that, social media is only going to get you so many hits on your YouTube live. You really have to just hit into the YouTube algorithm. So I've been working on that, and I know consistency is the key. But this is obviously, like I said, not surprising, but it's significant in that we are not going to be hearing about anything in the Tory Lanez case for a while now. I mean, this motion for bail with David Hereford was not going to be granted, and the appellate case never really had a chance. But before today, this ruling, there was, something pending. There was something going on in the Tory Lanez case. And as of right now, there's nothing going on in the Tory Lanez case. I mean, he's going to file his opening brief eventually in his appeal, but that might not come for a few months right now. So this is like the first time since I started covering the trial and all the post-trial stuff that it's just, there's nothing going on. He's in prison. There isn't anything pending to get him out. Yes, his notice of appeal is in, and of course he's going to pursue that. But right now we don't even have a date for when his opening brief would do. So I would expect that, maybe sometime early next year, sometime in the spring, maybe, but it actually might be even later than that. So this order is kind of monumental in that regard. And I wanted to bring it up here. I was also going to go over a couple of other bail motions in cases that I've been covering, but let's go over the order on this first from the appellate court. Somebody says, hey Megan, hey everyone, Danielle, thanks for hanging out with us today. Hi Meg, hey, what's up? We've got a lot going on here. We've got, I didn't really have an expectation on when they were going to rule on this. They, take a few weeks to do things, like they have other appellate motions or appellate writs that they have to look at ahead of this. So there isn't really like a specific time on when they were gonna rule this. But Friday afternoon makes sense. And given it's a high profile case, so much that I think people remember a couple weeks ago now when there was the false report out that he'd been granted bail. And it was actually spurred by somebody going into the appellate court and actually take the appellate court website and taking the time to set up a true filing account, which apparently anyone can do, but it would still be taking, some steps to do. And this person filed some kind of, non-relevant filing that didn't actually get docketed. But it was that filing that Tory's lawyers saw that made them think that the appellate court had granted bail. This was a couple weeks ago. And when all that action happened with the false reports about him being granted bail. So the idea that they, if a case is getting that much attention, it does make sense that they would come out with a substantive ruling like this rather than just saying, bail denied or something. But a lot of the times you would just see a one-line denial here. Thanks for everybody saying what's up to the reporter. Got a few things going on. It's been a busy week. I've been up in court in Los Angeles watching the manslaughter trial for the boat captain of the Conception, which I don't know if people remember that, but it was back in 2019 on Labor Day weekend. A bunch of people on a scuba diving trip, like 3-night scuba diving trip. There was a fire and they all ended up dying at the bottom of the boat, and the captain bailed out with his crew, and now the captain's on trial for manslaughter. And the trial is really, I mean, there's all the family members from the people who died there, so it's really emotional because, I mean, that was a horrible thing. So anyway, I was up at that today, did some other things with the Danny Masterson Scientology case, but then saw this and decided to get back home early so I could go over this with you guys. But can we address the elephant in the room? Well, yeah, I mean, the idea that he ever would have gotten bail, it's just like, this is, I mean, I hope he didn't pay for that motion. It was just, he was never going to get bail. And the idea that he has any kind of valid appealable issues that are going to like overturn his convictions, it's like, yeah, right. And I mean, he definitely doesn't have any substantive issues as detailed by his motion for new trial, but his lawyers don't really seem to be that experienced in the appellate courts, just judging by the work that they did here, the filings that they did here. So, I mean, if he did have a substantive appellate issue, it's like, are they going to be able to plead it out? I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I know some people are like, oh, she's so biased. It's like, whatever. I was talking about this with somebody the other day that like, there's just way too much catering to this like losing argument side of the Tory Lanez case. Like you're somehow biased for saying that the appellate court is not going to grant him bail. It's like, no, that's just stating a fact. And well, look what happened here. The court is in receipt of appellant's motion for bail pending appeal pursuant to Penal Code Section 1272.1 in California Rules of Court 8.312. So really, to call this a substantive ruling, I mean, they're just going through the codes here that allows him to do this, and it says the defendant must show he first sought relief in the superior court, and the superior court unjustifiably denied the application. So he has the first part down. He's definitely able to demonstrate that he first sought relief in the superior court. That'd be from Judge Hereford. But the catch here is, in the superior court unjustifiably denied the application. It's like, well, let's see how he does on that. And they make it pretty clear he didn't do very well. Provides that release on bail pending appeal shall be ordered if defendant demonstrates by clear and convincing evidence he is unlikely to flee, he does not pose a danger to the safety of any other person or to the community, and the appeal is not for the purpose of delay and raises a substantial legal question which could result in reversal. I think he lost on all counts. Let's see. Appellant has not shown that the superior court unjustifiably denied relief. Although he has submitted the minute order denying his motion for bail on appeal in the trial court, he has not submitted the reporter's transcript of that hearing or other settled statement containing the trial court's reasoning. Moreover, appellant concedes that the trial court denied his motion in part because he was convicted of a violent felony. Let's go back to this first part. He has not submitted the reporter's transcript of that hearing or the other settled statement containing the trial court's reasoning. And this is one thing I caught on to early on. I'm like, it's almost unfair that they just say he has not submitted the reporter's transcript of that hearing or other settled statement. Like it was Tory Lanez himself, like putting this all together. And it was Lanez who just personally did not submit the reporter's transcript. Of course not. It was his lawyers. But I mean, this is universal in all courts. They don't say the lawyer's names. The lawyers are representing the defendant. So you're acting on the defendant's behalf. But this is some pretty Bush League stuff right here. I mean, it's like, this seems pretty basic. And somebody on Twitter, asked her, like, well, are these guys brand new? I'm like, oh yeah, they are. So that kind of explains it here. But yeah, so I mean, they're not really giving the court like, I mean, if he submitted the transcript, I don't think it would have changed the ruling at all. But to just not even submit the transcript is a pretty Bush League move. And then it says, moreover, appellant concedes that the trial court denied his motion in part because he was convicted of a violent felony, namely assault with a semi-automatic firearm, with a finding that he caused great bodily injury. A true finding on a Penal Code Section 12022.5 firearm allegation renders the underlying crime a violent felony. It is official. The appellant court has made a ruling. Tory Lanez was convicted of a violent felony. He is a violent felon. Appellant notes that the proposed legislation, Assembly Bill, 1310, would make an enhancement under Penal Code Section 12022.5 legally invalid. However, as Appellant also notes, the governor has not signed that bill into law, nor would passage of that law result in a reversal of his conviction, which is important here. Even if it resulted in a reduction in Appellant's sentence, which is also questionable. They don't say that part that I just added. That was my ad lib, but that isn't to be sure yet. I mean, like I said, it's just, like they said, it's just the governor hasn't signed the bill yet. Therefore, Appellant currently stands convicted of a violent felony, which is a factor a court shall consider in determining whether the defendant poses a danger to the community. Also, according to Appellant, it's like, wow, you really did yourself no favors here in your arguments. The trial court denied his motion because Appellant is a Canadian citizen, which is a factor to consider in determining his likelihood of fleeing. Finally, the trial court denied the motion because it had to modify and increase bail during the proceedings below. Yeah, that suggests that there were concerns about Appellant being a potential flight risk. It's like, yeah, I mean, the idea that this ever had any chance of passing or of being granted when given his background, I think even without that stuff, it's really unlikely that he would have been granted bail. But to have his bail increased and to have the house arrest thing, which they actually don't mention, but that's what they're talking about, modify bail, that would kind of count on the house release thing. But this suggests that there were concerns about Appellant being a potential flight risk. It's like, therefore, based on the record, Appellant has not shown that the trial court unjustifiably denied relief or otherwise shown by clear and convincing evidence entitlement to relief. I think his lawyers, or maybe if we look through the actual record, which they apparently, I mean, we saw the motion that they filed. They just attached like a bunch of letters that were sent with his sentencing thing. But this statement here, this suggests that there were concerns about Appellant being a potential flight risk suggests. I think if you go back to those bail hearings, it was because of protective order violations. It was the August Alsina thing. There wasn't ever a bail increase because of anything actually just associated with, oh, we think he's going to flee, so we need to increase his bail. So, but the appellate court didn't have any of the transcripts, and his lawyers didn't like make any arguments like that. So, I mean, they just kind of made the argument about how he's always shown up to court, so he's not a flight risk. But they didn't really address the details of the bail motion. And it seems like this is kind of a good lesson for, or if you're ever doing this again or looking to actually make a better winning argument, they should have gone through the transcripts of the bail hearings that happened, the bail increase hearings, and highlighted the fact that it had nothing to do with him being a flight risk, that this had something to do with, a protective order or just to show that that shouldn't be used against him to be considered a flight risk, because obviously the appellate court probably hasn't just been hanging out in the Lipstick Alley message board devoted to the trial. So they're not completely clear on all the details here. So the flight risk thing is obviously, I mean, you could argue about whether that's even true. The pretrial bail increases were because he was a flight risk. I think no. And I think Judge Hereford would probably say no. But, I mean, the appellate court has the record that they have. So, and then also I think they would argue that the idea that he's not in a flight risk now. And then there's the Canadian citizenship part too, which is what prosecutors brought up. But yeah, it's basically the end of the line here for him. We still don't have a date for his opening brief, but as was reported a while back, he was moved from North Kern to like the California Correctional Institute, but which is near there. So it looks like he's settling in. Let me go through your guys' comments here. I gotta check it out. Oh gosh, we've got some trolls in here. This is the Tory. Gosh, they're just obsessive. Like, look, guys, it's almost what, November, the holidays are coming up. It's like, for the next 6 weeks, are people just going to be still tweeting about this case? Like, oh, read the transcripts. It's like, yeah, where's the transcript from closing arguments? Why don't you guys post that one? I mean, God, oh, geez, get her to slow down here. Yeah. When is the next appeal scheduled? No, there is no appeal. I mean, there is no date scheduled yet. He's got the notice of appeal in, but there isn't a brief back. Yeah, sorry, somebody was just spamming the comments, and it's the same person. I mean, it really is kind of weird how she comments all over everything. It's just like, you guys need to find another case to focus on, because there really isn't going to be anything like this. It's like, go for a walk or something. But the case here, and yeah, I mean, it bothers people who are actually trying to watch things and participate here. So yeah, let me go back into the file. We've got the file here. So yeah, there's still no actual date for when his appeal is going to be filed. So one thing, record on appeal filed, they got an extension to October 10th. I don't see a date entry for that, the October 10th record being filed. And I think they will do a docket entry once they have that process. So, but once the record on appeal is actually filed, that's when we're going to see the due date for the opening brief, which they could get delayed. But we still don't have an actual docket entry for the record on appeal that was due on the 10th. But maybe that'll be next week. I mean, maybe they were just waiting for this, but it really is very silly if they actually thought this was going to be granted. It had no chance. Like, it wasn't like a quality motion. But speaking of one, I'll bring up one. It was rejected too, but this was a completely different case in federal court. It's a developer who bribed a city councilman, and like next week he's going to go to prison for 6 years. He's supposed to report. He was sentenced back in like August, and he got a report date, but kind of at the last minute he asked to delay his report date, and the judge let him do that, delay the report date to prison by a month, because he wanted to file a motion for bail. And he hired new lawyers and went after this motion for bail that is really extensive. He had all this, and there was going to be a hearing yesterday, but Judge Walter just rejected it on the spot. But here, this is the case file. This is the big LA city corruption case. But well, here, let me get back here. Here it is. It's in recap. Sorry, kind of looking here. I'm bringing up the order for you guys. This is a more substantive, like an example of a really well pled motion for bail that, like, a little more substantive than the one Lanez issued. I'll pull up the actual motion here. But it was the same thing with him, where he got rejected for being a flight risk. This is the developer. And I didn't think there was any chance it was going to be granted, but the lawyers who put it together, like, are a lot more experienced than the lawyers who put that motion for bail together for Lanez. Oh wait, this is the denial of it. That's a little short and sweet, but I was going to go for the actual motion here. Yeah, so he filed this back in September 18th. He filed a motion for bail. And he really gets into some details about his trial. Says he's not a flight risk. Says the court arguably erred in denying defense counsel's Batson motion based on the exclusion of the sole remaining Asian juror, Lee. The defendant is Asian. So, I mean, these are all appellate issues that they're going to be raising in his Ninth Circuit appeal. So they put together this motion for bail that goes into it all. And the biggest problem for him, though, is the flight risk. And like worse, he has it a little worse than Tory Lanez on that for sure, because he actually, in some of his pretrial stuff, talks about some of the recordings, like the FBI informants who were recording him when he was talking about the bribery that he did to the city councilman. He at one point says something about how, oh, sometimes I thought I might have to flee to Korea or something. And he also just has tons of money. But when you go to the judge's ruling that he issued the other day rejecting it, he brings up those statements. He vacated the hearing that they were going to have. He said there was no reason to even have a hearing, and he just rejected it outright. And he's going through it, and it's the same. I mean, it's federal courts, so maybe they word it a little different, and they're not citing the California statutes. They're citing federal law, but it's the same issues that you have to show. Not a flight risk, clear and convincing evidence that he is not likely to flee or pose a danger to society. And Judge Walter says that David Lee, the developer who bribed the councilman, has failed to demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence that he is not likely to flee. And this is when, the developer is not like as upstanding citizen as he might make people want to know. He was actually being investigated by the IRS before this public corruption investigation. And when he was talking to this guy this Justin Kim turned out to be an FBI informant who was recording him for the FBI. And Kim says, or Lee says, the first time I was hit, I really thought I had to run away to Korea. So they've got statements like that on the record. He's talking about this, and he has access to tons of cash. I mean, there was no way Judge Walter was going to let him forego having to report to prison during his Ninth Circuit appeal. It says the court's concerns regarding defendant's risk of flight are greatly heightened by the fact that defendant possesses or has access to large sums of cash that could be used to facilitate flight and allow him to live very comfortably in Korea. Moreover, defendant was convicted of obstruction of justice through falsification of records, which demonstrates his willingness to evade responsibility for his crimes. Yeah, he never really had much of a chance of getting any kind of bail on this either. But what's interesting is somebody who did get bail is a politician in Los Angeles who was convicted in the USC bribery scheme. He was like shaking down this old lady dean at the University of Southern California to try to get some kind of scholarship and job for his son, because his son had to resign from the state assembly. So needed a good landing spot because his son had a sexual harassment investigation he was trying to shake at the state assembly. So Mark Ridley Thomas, this politician in LA, hits up the dean of the School of Social Work at USC and was exchanging benefits. Like he was amending a contract that LA County was doing for some telehealth virtual counseling center, and he was going to loop in her school, and the school stood to make a ton of money of it. So it was going to help her reputation and everything. But MRT was telling her that she needed to help his son, get him into the school, get him a professorship and everything, which is totally illegal. He got popped on bribery, honest services fraud, which you're defrauding the public of services, of honest services that they're entitled to. It's a pretty classic federal charge. But he got convicted on 7 counts and then sentenced to 3.5 years in prison in August. And of course, he has a Ninth Circuit appeal pending. And he filed a motion for bail that I didn't think was going to get granted. I, as somebody who's followed the case, thought that prosecutors would oppose it. But prosecutors actually agreed to it. They stipulated and said, sure, as long as he doesn't try to delay his Ninth Circuit appeal. His opening brief is due in January or something, just said he's agreed to not ask for any kind of delays on his Ninth Circuit appeal. And they said, because of that, we're agreeing that he can stay out of prison pending his appeal. And I was surprised. And if they hadn't done that, I'm not sure if the judge would have allowed it. But when the prosecutors agree to stuff like that, it kind of, the judge could maybe still reject it, but the idea that they're going to do that, if prosecutors are agreeing. So Mark Ridley Thomas gets bail pending appeal. Like he's going to be out through the Ninth Circuit. Through the Ninth Circuit appeal. But I think the big thing on that is nobody actually thinks Mark Ridley Thomas is a flight risk. He's been around LA for so long and his family's in LA that, yeah, nobody thinks he's going to flee the country. He doesn't have ties to another country. He doesn't have all that much money. Lee, the developer, has way more money. So the one person of the three, we've got Tory Lanez, the rapper, David Lee, the developer who bribed the city councilman, and then the Mark Ridley Thomas, the longtime LA politician who was shaking down the old lady Dean. Mark Ridley Thomas gets bail pending appeal. Nobody else gets bail. And I would kind of expect none of them to. But again, it was the flight risk with Ridley Thomas. And then also the fact that, bribery is not a violent crime. So let me see what I am messing here. Oh, man, she's back. I thought I got rid of her. Oh, maybe I just put her on timeout or something. I don't really want to just ban people. She's just annoying. It's like, gosh, these people just need to find something else to do. Yeah, wow, he shouldn't have attempted to bribe. Yeah, no, it was, and the judge he got is pretty harsh too. I'm not sure if all the judges in that courthouse would have gone with the 72 months, but because prosecutors were asking for 84, and the developer asked for 18 months, and he had all these character letters and, stuff from his church. And I remember the judge even said that he thought the wife's letter was really resonated with him, and that the wife was right, that her husband's just a good man who made a bad mistake. And then he turned around and sentenced him to 6 years in prison. It was like, ouch. But he said that public corruption for sure is a particularly insidious crime, and that it's shown in kind of the literature amongst the federal judges, like the case law that they read. And if they look at all the other public corruption cases that have gone on in the country, like Rod Blagojevich, the Illinois governor who sold his Senate seat and is now on some PR campaign on CNN because he got pardoned and wants people to think that he actually didn't do anything wrong, even though he did 8 years in prison or something. But that's kind of a classic public corruption case that people look at. And one of the ideas is that while some crimes can't be deterred through harsh sentences, if you sentence, I don't think people would say that sentencing Tory Lanez to 10 years in prison for the shooting would have a big deterrent effect from people shooting other people. It's just not a lot of crimes they really give weight to deterrence, but public corruption is different. They say that public corruption can be deterred through harsh sentences because it's a bunch of people in power and white collar criminals who do not want to go to prison. And when they see this stuff, it kind of makes them think twice about that stuff. And I know the talk around LA was the day that Judge Walter sentenced that developer to 72 months in prison. Some people commented that this is probably sending shockwaves through the development community because a lot of those guys are really dirty. I mean, there's so much corruption in LA, and they're so used to getting away with it all the time. They never think that they're going to have to do anything like that. They think that prison is for the lower class of society and they can just buy their way out of everything. So having Judge Walter sentence Lee to 72 months in prison was significant for sure. But, Yeah. And this is the guy, Natasha says, this is the guy where the judge sentenced him for 6 years or so, even with an elderly mother. Yeah. This is the one where David Lee in his own letter to the judge, and I think some other family members talked about how he's a caretaker for his elderly mother who's in her late 90s. And he's afraid that if he gets any kind of significant prison sentence, he's never going to see her again. And Judge Walter, when he was reading his ruling, said, the defendant is, or maybe he called him Mr. Lee, said that he's rightly concerned that he won't see his mother again. It's ouch. But then said, that this is why criminals should think of their families before they commit crimes, not after they get caught. Really, Meg was not on trial. It's seriously. And I just go back to my going into the trial, and I remember just go back to the actual trial, because I actually have a podcast with Slate coming out tomorrow where I remind people that the Tory Lanez case, what was going to happen to Tory Lanez was decided in over on December 23rd. He never had a chance at appeal. His motion for, I mean, it's just, it was ridiculous. He was never, none of that stuff ever had any chance of happening. He was convicted. The trial was the big thing. Like that's when it ended. And anybody who remembers the trial actually was there, did not just like read the transcripts, that one transcript or whatever that you guys pass around. Where's the closing argument transcript? Like the trial did not go well for Tory. Like, yeah. Wondering if this makes her. I mean, it's just like it's just crazy, and I'm just glad. Like I said, nothing is going on in the Tory Lanez case anymore. He's in prison. He doesn't have anything pending. Yes, he has his notice of appeal in, but he's not going to have his opening brief for a while. So, yeah, definitely keep you guys abreast on the case of the captain who abandoned his ship. Yeah, and that's been, I've been in court for the last 3 days for that, and I wanted to get a story out sooner, but I think it's going to publish Monday. And yeah, that is really horrible. And just everything that's been going on in the trial procedure the last 3 days with like the opening statements, and then the first witness, they were going to play this video that there's footage from the trip. Like the cell phones, of course, were all damaged and destroyed in the wreck, but some of them they were able to get photos and video off of. So there's photos of the dive, and there's photos that the different dives that they did, and then there's photos that they took down of the bunkhouse, because it's just this really cramped bunk room with like, it's just filled with bunk beds for people to sleep in, and they were all fucking trapped down there when the fire happened, and it was just terrifying. And they have the day of or the time for when the first Mayday call went in. The captain called Mayday. It was like 3:14 or 3:15 a.m. I got to check my notes. I was 14. They jumped overboard at like 3:15. And then there's a video on one of the passengers' cell phone. It's a 24-second video of what's happening. They're like all realizing down in the bunk room, there's people up, and there's like this huge wall of flames, and this guy like in the middle of the screen, like he's like screaming, like there has to be another way out of here. Like there has to be more extinguishers. Somebody's like, oh my God. There's another person like, oh my God. And then like apparently somebody says we're going to die, but it wasn't as loud as some of the other stuff on the video. But I mean, it's fucking terrifying. This is like it's the last time these people are seen alive. It was, I guess, the families of the victims who wanted to see it have been able to see it privately, like back November 2022. Is when they first saw it, but it was played in court. And of course the guy's lawyers were trying to object, and they did a motion, pretrial stuff, to try to get the video excluded as evidence. And prosecutors called it like one of the more outrageous attempts to just like exclude relevant evidence from the case. Because of course it's prejudicial, but it's totally relevant to the case because of the timing on it. And it shows that they were all alive and well, like 2 minutes after the captain just jumped overboard. And one of them even says there has to be another way out of here. And there is. There's the staircase that they all know, which is filled with smoke. But then there's also an emergency hatch, which was covered with smoke too. They couldn't see it, but they had never been shown where the emergency hatch was. And there's all these like policy stuff and failures that went in. But I mean, the video being shown was obviously really emotional for the family members who were in court, and they were being told like they can't show any kind of visible emotion because it might hurt you don't want to prejudice the jury. So the couple, the man and woman whose son is actually the guy in the video, he was his name was Charles, and he was worked in Hollywood movies and stuff, but he was on the scuba diving trip. They told me that they actually went into the FBI or maybe the Coast Guard to watch the video when it was released last year, and they went in not knowing that he was the one in the video. So it was really hard for her to watch it. And really emotional, everything. So my story is kind of tracking all that and explaining all that. It should publish Monday, but I think I'm going to do something on all these bail motions with MRT and Tory and everything. But yeah, folks, you were watching. Yeah. The comments, they're so stupid. It's like, could you guys just get out of here? Yeah, Mark Ridley is a criminal. I agree. He's a convicted felon, and Ridley Thomas has always had a bad reputation. I could tell you some stories about him. Yeah, I was surprised that he got bail too. I was like, oh, great, feel a lot less safe. Yeah, the captain case, and it is really sad, and I'm not sure, how easy it'll be to get a conviction. It seems like the kind of case where he might end up taking the stand, like testifying himself. I don't know. It's just it's crazy. It's really sad. Where is the DJ Envy interview? Yeah, I've got to talk to his lawyer. Massimo was going to Paris for a business trip, but he was saying that we might be able to set something up next week. So I wanted to do it today, but he couldn't do it today. And it's not going to be DJ Envy. It'll be his lawyer, but hopefully sometime next week. I was just kind of caught up in court this week, but I don't think I'm going to go to the conception trial next week, maybe on Tuesday, but there's just too much other stuff going on that I can do at my desk, and I can't actually work in the courtroom. I can't have my laptop out, but yeah. They made an example out of the developer. They did. Yeah, and they even just admit it. Let me see. Any comments? Any questions? You guys got any questions or anything? I think I'm going to put together a story on send something out in the morning to my mailing list on the bail being rejected, but then also include MRT's bail and David Lee's bail, include the rulings and everything, and have screenshots and everything that you guys can check out. And then Monday will be the story on the conception trial, which has been going on. I wish I'd kind of gotten that out sooner, but everybody covered opening statements, and I'm definitely going to have stuff from opening statements, but the video and just all the drama that went into the video and the emotion of the family and everything is kind of what I'm focusing on there. So that'll be it. If you guys have any questions, get them in, or else I'm just going to sign off. And again, bail rejected, not surprising. And there's nothing going on for a while. Well, I guess the next thing, and that will be noteworthy, is when there's finally a docket entry about when his when his record of appeal is filed. Just that being filed, I don't think is really worth reporting. But when they give him a date for his opening brief, that'll be noteworthy. That'll be a tweet. That'll be a tweet that the Shade Room can screenshot and post. But who knows when it'll be? It'll probably be maybe in the next month we could see that, and then the opening brief could be in March. But it's really common that if they do get the first due date like that, they can ask for an extension and get it extended really, really easily. So thank you for your work, Megan. You are appreciated. Thank you so much. The lane stuff, and I'm being profiled by somebody right now, and she asked me, she's like, do you ever get tired of talking about the lane stuff? I mean, there's so much other stuff that I work on, and everybody just wants to talk about the lane stuff. But I love talking about all the other stuff I work on, and they really, I mean, when I look at, I don't know, when I just look at what they're still focusing on, it's like, what are they going to do now? I mean, there really is nothing to talk about. The IA defense, Pros Michelle. Yeah. I did a live on that. Didn't get very many views, but I did a live on the Pros thing where I kind of went over that. And I actually talked to the guy who owns the IA program that Kenner used. And really the IA program was the least of the problems in that motion for new bail. It's the catchiest, kind of easiest one for people to understand. But if you believe the motion for new bail, the trial was already lost by the time closing arguments rolled around. But great. Appreciate the info and updates. Thanks, Megan. Yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in on a Friday evening. Let's go all out and enjoy the night and get some stuff done. Also, baseball, postseason baseball. We got to check it out. But the victim blaming and all the just obsession about Megan, and they're so immature too. It's like, dude, grow up and just go away. Let the adults run the world. But there's definitely some ethical issues in the legal industry about use of AI. And I mentioned that in the Pros Michelle story that I did, that there was a another case where some lawyers actually got sanctioned because they used an AI program to write a brief, and it like made up a bunch of fake cases and stuff, and they submitted it. But no, Praz is not in jail. He's awaiting sentencing, so he hasn't been sentenced yet. And it's the same typical post-trial stuff where he got convicted, so now this is his motion for new trial, and he got new lawyers, and his motion for new trial is just like brutal against David Kenner. It's all about ineffective assistance of counsel, and that for I think it's a long shot that he's actually going to get a motion for bail. But the lawyers he has working on him are frankly the lawyers he should have had doing the trial. Like they actually know what they're doing and are really trying for him. But it's such a long shot after you get convicted by a jury that you're actually going to get a new trial. So chances are his new trial is going to be rejected, and then I think he'll be sentenced like early next year. And because he's been out of custody, he probably won't be like remanded on the spot. They're going to give him a report date. But I mean, it's like this Carlos Pena stuff. Who I've got to do more DJ NB Carlos Pena stuff. But they don't understand how serious this stuff is. You know, it's like serious prison time. And I mean, Praz just made a bad move hiring David Kenner. But you know, if you're not around lawyers all the time, it's like Praz. It's like, oh, David Kenner, he got Snoop Dogg acquitted. It's like, no, he should have hired like a DC white collar firm for that for sure. They don't understand the other parts of society. Yeah, don't appear to uplifting degenerate behavior. Yeah, the other, and I don't want to get into the details of it, but I think when I say, you know, that when Blueface said something about Meghan the other week, and there were all these, and people were like replying to me about it, and I even saw somebody be like, "Oh, this hasn't gotten the mainstream attention it deserves." Like, mainstream attention? No, dude, we're not. And I'm gonna block people who like bring that up in my replies. It's like, go be crude somewhere else, you 17-year-olds. Like, it's just gross. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, don't get off on the tangent. Like, I'm excited that, like I said, and that probably within a few weeks or something, we'll get a date on when his opening brief is going to be due. But it's not going to be due for a few months. And there's nothing going on with it. There's nothing to say. There's nothing to report. There's nothing going on. Yeah, no, exactly. I'm not gonna. It's just like, yeah, and to me, the stupidity of them being like, oh, why isn't mainstream stuff picked this up? It's like, oh, gee, I don't know. Yeah, could we? Yeah, yeah. Read the haters down. Yeah, somebody did once tell me, they're like, yeah, I don't think it was ever. I saw somebody say, like, I don't think it was ever personal with Megan the reporter, but she just is not about to let herself be bullied by degenerate idiots. It's like, yeah, exactly. Go to hell. See what's going on. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Love you all. See you all later. I'll try to do these more often. I want to do like some pre-made videos. I was thinking I might do a pre-made video on the bail process, explaining it, like what is next for Tory in the appeal or something. And, maybe something on the conception trial when it ends. But legalaffairsandtrials.com, I will have some articles on this soon. So check it out. Oh, somebody wants to know why Praz is in court right now. It's that really complicated political lobbying case that Leonardo DiCaprio actually testified in this trial. But I've got a story on www.legalaffairsandtrials.com. And yeah, somebody asked if I'm doing an interview with DJ NB's lawyer. Yes, we need to set that up for next week. It's not scheduled yet, but I definitely want to get that set up. And he seemed like he was all about it. I kind of figured that he wouldn't do that, but he's definitely on the offensive. And then just watching Carlos Pena's live, I'm like, wow, this guy seems like a total moron. And I mean, I kind of wouldn't be surprised if maybe DJ NB doesn't get indicted, but we'll see. We can talk that out with D'Angelo. So good. Well, yes, thank you for tuning in. My explanations are always so thorough and easy to understand, and I look forward to those articles. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I'm happy to help you all, the ladies and the gentlemen of the chat. So I will see you all later. Let's all go for a walk and check out the sunset.